So, you know, you've been making music officially, right? We were just talking about this since 1975.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened in '75?
'75 was NPR, local NPR station offered up free recording for 2-3 hours, and you had to come up with 20 minutes worth of music. This was in Pennsylvania, so I took advantage of that and knew nothing about it. Right. In fact, I thought that the band would know the material when I got there. I was convinced that if I wrote the song in my room, when I got there to play it, the guys I got would just know how to play along.
So were you 6? How old were you when that happened?
Yeah, I was around 20.
Right.
Around 20.
Right. So there was a steep learning curve at that point.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well.
Right.
But in '72, a few years before that, there was a big flood in Pennsylvania and wiped out our house. And same year, my dad remarried in Arizona, so I was splitting my time until finally in '76 I moved to Tucson permanent. And there was no information. We had no college radio playing anything new, so it was tough to get any information, any new music. If you went down, there was one punk rock record store, and they'd only have 1 or 2 copies of what you wanted. So when you couldn't get that, basically what happened was it was very cheap to live there, and you'd exist on a pot of beans for the week, frijoles, and then we would make our own music because we couldn't buy any.
Like being a pioneer.
Yeah, making your own clothes.
Making your own clothes.
Sonic
and shoes.
Thread, the Sonic Thread.
Sonic Thread. Any of you can have that band name.
Yeah.
By the way.
That's right. And I'm not a singer-songwriter.
I know. I said that because I used the words. So here's the thing. There's a superimposed thing that comes up that says Howe Gelb on it, and the guys asked us before forum, we need a title. What do we want? What do we do as title? What's the problem?
The problem is that there's no correct term for what it is a group of us do. Ever since Dylan started writing his own material and sang his own material, didn't wait for a proper singer to come along because there's no time. There was too much material piling up. You got to deliver the material, but you're not really a singer. He's not really a singer,
right.
But he's a songwriter. And if nobody's taking your songs and playing them, then that's not even. I mean, you're not really a songwriter. Nobody's singing your songs.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
So there's a group of people that aren't good enough to be musicians that could play anybody else's music, and that was my problem. So you'd have to make up something in order to play it.
Right. Which sounds an awful lot like what people say about punk rock.
Yeah, well, when that came around, finally, it was a great relief.
Yeah.
It was all attitude instead of technical ability.
So you moved to New York from Pennsylvania, right? Is that what you did?
No,
you went to Tucson.
Yeah.
And you started. So what band did you form in Tucson?
End of the '70s, there's a band called Giant Sandworms with this my best friend out there, who I didn't realize was born in East Berlin. He was a dobro player, slide player, grew up in Chicago, and he had no accent, no East German accent.
Right.
I didn't realize his background. So we started this band called Giant Sandworms. And then in 1983, it got shortened to just Giant Sand. In '81, we went out to New York just to see. I thought that's where all the good music, all the good guitar music was coming from.
Right.
So the other band in town called the Surfers went out to Los Angeles because that's where they thought the good guitar music was. They became Green on Red.
Right.
And we went to New York, and we got there too late because bands like Television and Patti Smith Group and Talking Heads and Ramones, they were all gone. So it was all the big snare sound, the drum machine, and the Casio, and Tainted Love was the order of the day by Soft Cell. So we had missed it. But we played CBGB's a whole bunch, and it was a very tough city to live in back then. It's not like Disneyland now.
Yeah.
It's nice to be there now, but it was real rough back in '81.
Yeah, wow.
And it made everywhere else
So that was 81, by the way. That's what we're talking about, 81.
Yeah.
So where was the revenue for you? Like, where was the money? How did you make money with music?
Back then, we still weren't making records, so I just got a job. The guy had connections in Arizona. Right. So the two guys in the band worked at McDonald's, and I got a job in this art gallery, uptown, repacking old Indian pots to ship back and forth to Arizona. So that's how we existed there. But
so that's what you did to survive. And so this is kind of, I mean, this gets funny because then you talk about the first time you got to put out a record. What brought you to that?
Yeah, for me, I think it started late. So I didn't put out a record till I was 28 because we couldn't figure out how to get it done. When I went back to Tucson, there's just no information about it. And then we found a studio in Los Angeles, so we recorded a record in a day and a half, and for $400. And then I got drunk enough to give the tape of it to a passing band through town. And then that guy called me, the manager, a few months later, said a label in France is interested. And they'll give you $1,000 for a 3-year license. And then it began making sense.
Right. And so, but you always kept your masters, right? You didn't, didn't do deals, regular record deals.
Yeah, because when he said license, that means you get the rights back in 3 years.
Yeah.
So then I did the next one like that, and the next one, and the next one. And then, because I'm not under contract, I just kept doing them that way.
Right. Which is unusual. You understand that. I mean, especially for a band that was started making records in what, 1981? Not 81, 85?
It was 85, 84.
Yeah. So like 84, 85, I mean, if you were signed, you were basically giving ownership of your masters. The audio, the sound recordings of your stuff were going to be owned by the label, but Howe happened into a strange path so that he ended up licensing his stuff and owning his own masters, so that they'd revert and they remained his property, or they rotated back to him and became his property again, which kind of served you in the long run pretty well.
Well, I didn't know if it'd be good or bad, but it's okay.
And so making records is what started you not having to work wrapping Indian pots anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So how did that go? What happened? So you sold records and you got enough in mechanical and artist royalties.
No.
So what did you do?
No. It still had to be supplemented. I went back to Tucson for a while, and then moved out to L.A.
Right.
And delivered L.A. weeklies and pizza and all kind of little odd jobs. Right. But the more records we'd make, then the sooner we'd get the licensing money, and then we could do a tour. And
so is that the progression for you? You would get like a chunk of cash that would allow you to tour.
Yeah, and they'd give us $1 for every previous amount sold. So when they sold 3,000 records, we'd get $3,000 for the next record.
Yeah.
And we'd always record for half or less.
Right. So that was your formula. Yeah. So building an audience for you was being on the road.
Yeah.
Like not that much in terms of releasing records at that time. It just sounds familiar. It sounds like now.
Yeah.
It doesn't see which is what one of the points I wanted to make by having you here was the fact that the way you started out and the way you were kind of a lifer to begin with, you weren't a hobbyist. You were like, you'd do anything to be able to keep making music, right? You were working, they were working at McDonald's and you were working at the museum, or you'd deliver LA weeklies or pizza or whatever the hell you had to do. You would do that because you had to make music. You wanted to keep making music.
Yeah, and I think that's a process of elimination of when you figure out what can you do in this world to exist. What will you put up with and what will you not put up with? And then I came from a little factory town in Pennsylvania, and I didn't want to be stuck there. So I wanted to get a royalty check. I wanted payment to come in where it didn't matter where I was living.
Right. So you could live wherever you wanted. Right.
Yeah, so that was kind of the instigation.
Right. But, it wasn't only that kind of determined the kind of audience you built. I think the other reason that you've been able to last this long is because you had values that you were able to transmit to your audience. Like, there was something about you guys that attracted an audience. I was hoping that you might play a little bit of music just to get some sense of your aesthetic.
Yeah.
But it's up to you when you want to do that.
I think it should be noted that if you sign to a label, you have a better chance of notoriety, of becoming popular, because you have a label is going to invest a lot of money in you, and they need to get the return back most of the time, or there's a chance of it anyway.
Right.
It could go south.
And a label casts a wider net. I mean, they specialize in production and distribution. You know, they have to do an element of marketing and promotion.
They got the machine behind it and all that.
So you cast kind of a wider net, and you attract that initial audience, right, which you were able to do.
No, because if you do the license method, then it's more blue collar.
Right. Because you weren't part of the roster that got marketed, but that didn't benefit. They didn't own as much they didn't take as much of a risk. Is that what you're saying?
I think
there wasn't
so.
enough as much risk
There's
involved.
not enough investment on their part. So
right, not as much of an investment.
Yeah, so they can't work it as much.
So then you were on your own to build your own relationships
and so it's going to depend on the amount of ambition you have. And I had very little ambition. All I knew is what I didn't want to do.
Right.
I didn't want to be stuck somewhere. I didn't want to rely on anyone else. I wanted to do something that was independent. I wanted to find out what it was I could do to exist in the world and go anywhere I wanted to go.
I don't think that you're unusual as a musician. I know a lot of musicians, and a lot of musicians know an awful lot about what they don't want.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, like musicians, that seems to be an MO. Does anybody in this room agree? A lot of musicians know what they don't like. They recognize something negative, something that repels them, and the things that attract them are more intuitive, I think, which is a funny way to. I mean, that's just an observation.
Yeah, yeah. And from there, you can assemble what it is or who it is you are.
And I have to say, I mean, you did have an aesthetic. You did have there was an element of like free form. There was there was an aggressive nature to your music.
Yeah.
But there was an improvisational nature.
It was very improvisational. But the improvisation wasn't within the soloing. It was in the song structure.
Right.
So and you change it every night.
So a song was always different, but it wasn't like an improvisational solo that did it.
Right.
And the instrumentation was like punk rock instrumentation: drums, guitar, bass, vocals.
Yeah.
Right. Electric guitars. They were loud most of the time. Then you started making more acoustic guitar.
Well, I think
sound.
we were hungry to do things we hadn't done before, so we'd stumble anything.
Yeah. So what was the journey record to record then? What what I'm trying to hone in on, just so you know, like I am trying to hone in on something. Mm-hmm. It's this idea that you were able to forge a line of relationship with your audience, like with your fans. They knew what you mean. They know what it meant to be a Giant Sand fan, what it meant to be a fan of Howe Gelb's.
Yeah.
And that may have come from knowing what you didn't want.
Yeah.
But it also there were positive movements too, and like decisions that you made to nose your way towards something good that made you happy, right?
Yeah, but it was I never stopped long enough to figure out what that was or to describe it. Didn't need to be described.
Right, that's right. Yeah, right.
Which made the music difficult to describe.
Right. Which I think is part of what did the job. When the music isn't particularly easy to describe, it has it has an effect on people that is either attractive or repulsive. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
If somebody heard you play, you would exclude a portion of the audience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
now, you didn't do that. I didn't mean that in a bad way.
No, you're only right.
But you have to, right? But you have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you aim for, and especially now, post major label, major machine thing, you need to exclude a number of people in order to tell people what you really are.
But it depends what you want. It depends what you want out of it. And we were into the road trip, and we weren't into the destination. So if you're into where it'll get you, that's just as viable, just as valid. But that's what you're into. That's what you should focus into. And then,
what do you mean?
Well, if you want if you want the success, if you want a substantial amount of money and all the things that come with the ills of success, then that's okay if that's where you're comfortable. I think if you want to stay at doing it for a while, you just got to do what You have to find out where you're comfortable.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's where the meaning can be. I don't think you can. I think you end up being really top-heavy with no foundation when all you're doing it for is financial gain.
Well, I think you end up doing less yourself. You tap into other sources that help to carry you there, or that's what you're after. So
like
if
what?
it all, well, you know, like those bigger labels and agents and lawyers and management, and if then things fall below a certain number and nobody wants to work with you because they're not making their percentage points, they're 10%, 15, and 20%, then you're left to do it on your own, and if you haven't learned how to do it on your own, then you don't do it anymore. And this way, learn how to deal with every aspect of it on your own, and then you're not reliant on anyone. And you may only have, like, I've put out maybe 40 records or so.
Only 40?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or so. I think it's bad luck to count. But then, you know, they only sell, like, maybe they sell 25,000 each. So worldwide, doesn't get any bigger. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't think it gets smaller, but now with the tanking CD sales, maybe it does.
Yeah,
I don't know if it applies or not.
We don't have to look at that.
But you just do it like almost like a subscription. There's the cult crowd out there that'll buy it.
Yeah.
They just want to see what you're up to next.
Right. But they don't just want to see what you're up to next. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you did something that you may not value, but you did something that made them want to see what you're up to next. Why do they trust you?
Well, it's just your choices along the way. You know, you pick these things to become the soundtrack of your life, and you're stuck with them. You have to. Yeah. They bring you back to that moment in your past that a lot of important memories were made or things were happening. So you're kind of, it's your flavors you've chosen, and then you're kind of stuck with those choices.
Right. For
better or for worse, but usually it's for better.
Yeah, yeah.
The worst part is trying to explain to your friend why you like this band no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
And they kind of look at you funny.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to say. I think that's exactly what you've been able to do. I don't know where our time is, but I want to check time. What is it? 5:30?
Richard.
Okay. The reason that I want to check time is because I would like you to be able to play music for a reason.
Yeah. Too much talking, right?
I mean, the reason I want you to, it's not too much talking, but I think part of it is that this is what you put in your time doing.
Okay.
And this is who you are. So do you want to play something on guitar?
Yeah. Can I use this one now?
Yeah.
Is this on?
No. How about that? There we go.
Great.
I think it sounds all right, but...
Erosion is the reaper's best friend. Comes a-calling on you again and again. Sees how you're hanging on, and how much of you is already gone. Maybe it's got nothing to do with deserves, but baby, it's been a war of nerves. Love is a killer and a real good filler when it finally comes into play. But nothing's gonna keep that day away. Way up here at the end of the line, it's becoming increasingly clear, like any good sign. I'm gonna invest all the rest of my time putting in a good word for all mankind. Maybe it's got nothing to do with reserve, but baby, been running out of reserves. That love is a killer and a real good filler finally comes into play. This is me loving you till the day. This is me loving you all the way.
Over here. That was a good move.
Thanks. This is a 1959 Martin with the original pickup, a D. Armand. They tried making electric guitars for a short spell. And the end.
So, can you guys tell what I mean when I say that he made choices that attracted some people and didn't attract other people, right? They're like, maybe, I mean, that should be apparent even to you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I had people play with me that went on and did much better. In fact, all my drummers.
Yeah.
There's the 5 drummers I've had was first guy I went on to play with Bob Dylan for 5 years. The second guy is still playing with Jonathan Richman. The third started a band with my bass player called Calexico. The fourth became the drummer in the Arcade Fire.
Yeah.
And the fifth, well, he's still with me, but he's been playing with Isabel Campbell and Mark Lanigan.
Yeah, he's trying to get away.
Yeah, he's excellent. So,
so you made your bed, right? And now you got to lie in it.
Yeah, and after 50, it drives you crazy a little bit because you start thinking back, you form conclusions.
What do you mean?
Well, that's a funny thing. It's like you wonder, up until now, you think anything's possible, and then you get to the point in your life where you're old enough where you kind of see what the possibilities are. So it's got its perks.
Well, see, I don't know. I think maybe are you feeling negative these days?
Manopause?
Yeah, it's manopause.
I don't know.
Are you feeling pessimistic, or are you optimistic about not the business? I don't really care to talk about the business. I want to talk about your business.
Well, the thing we didn't touch on is having children.
All right.
Because that's you all are.
What?
We all are.
Children?
Were and will have. More than likely procreate or be part of a species that is. And so when that applies itself unconditionally, you got to make some career choices. And a lot of the women you see, a lot of my friends that made the choice not to have children, and later on that's going to harbor some regret. And then on the other hand, a lot of us have decided to have kids along the way, and then that harbors its own kind of, not regret so much as you see where things veered off. Because if you're out there all the time, you can't have a home life and you can't raise kids up. And if you're out there all the time, you're going to get further along, more than likely.
Yeah.
So if you do it while you're young enough, then later on if you don't wait too long, you can have that family and be a little bit.
You mean if you do your road work while you're young enough?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. To get out
or
there.
Or if you figure out a way to be a family on the road.
Which brings it to my heroes, the O'Connells. They're at the top of my list of people that go out there and raise 4 kids up and take them out on the road, homeschool them, and the kids are fantastic human beings, and the music is as spine-tingling as it's ever been, and it's just,
It's very nice of you, but yeah. This is not about us.
But that's why I'm here.
Well, yeah.
I'm here because of how much I admire how you've lived your life with your family and raised them and everything.
Well, I think you're touching on something that's really important to them, even at this early juncture in their careers, right? You've got to start to think about, you're really trying to make a career of this, right? You want to make a career of it, which means you will do this into your 30s, you hope. You hope you're doing it into your 40s and into your 50s. So what's your strategy for having a life and a family?
But don't talk yourself out of anything either, because, I mean, there's...
Right.
You don't know until later, but John Parrish is John Parrish, Billy, and myself are the three. We have a men's group. It's an unwritten charter.
Yeah.
But John Parrish, who you might know, works. He found P.J. Harvey when she was 18 and has continued to work with her over the years. And he's a producer, but he's also raising kids. He doesn't know. Yep. Nobody has any security. You don't
what do you call it? Security.
Yeah, security. Yeah. John will be on Conan O'Brien tonight with P.J. Harvey in case you get cable. Right.
If you have cable here, you can see our other friend. All right, so let's remember what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I forgot.
No, me too.
But I think that the point that I was nudging towards with you guys there is that you are trying to do this as a career. Does that represent a conflict for any of you guys? Like, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? I saw you nod vigorously. Is there a mic? Can you pass the mic up? So I know you're serious in your music, right? And you want to do it for a long time. What's your plan? I mean, do you think about it?
Oh, yeah, I think about my plan every single day and, how I'm going to balance it, how I'm going to have an income and, be able to do some of the things that I want to do outside of music, like have a family someday and all that. But the fact that I can't ever give up, I don't have a choice. Like, I literally can't to give up the music. So, you got to figure it out.
So in that case, you do need a plan.
Yeah,
right?
A lot.
Yeah. And yet, it does get to that point where what you said is really relevant. Like, you don't want to talk yourself out of anything. You don't want to think there's a rule about being in music or having kids, because you can manage it, and maybe you do have to make hay while the sun shines. Do a lot of your road work and achieve a certain level, and then realize you're going to sort of have to fall back from that a little bit if you give up the road work, or maybe you can pick your spots and travel away, right? Which is what I think you've been doing, right?
Well, when the first record was licensed, it was in France, and the second one was licensed in England. And then when my first child came 2 years later, which are the ramifications from dating at the office.
What do you mean?
What?
No, I don't
if you
even
date
know
at the office,
yeah.
Work will never be the same again.
Right.
If it works out good, it'll never be the same. If it works out bad, it'll never be the same.
Right. So you met your wife?
She played bass.
Yeah.
And she was in the Go-Go's right before they broke up. She was hired in.
Right.
Kathy Valentine moved over to guitar, and then she went on to work with Belinda Carlisle's first record. Wrote her first hit single, "Mad About You," and then there was a big nasty record company that came to her and said, "We'll give you a record contract and she was pregnant at the time. She said, "If you don't have the baby." Right? So just like you read about, that satanic endeavor.
Yeah.
Which, of course, our baby's 23 years old now, and
living in Los Angeles.
She wants to go out on the road with a band and start her own band. So
I helped her tour manage last year.
Yeah, that's right. But what that did for me was I couldn't tour everywhere all the time then. So at that time, we saw how good it was in Europe. Here you had to buy your own dinner on the road and at Denny's, or if you were lucky, and sneak the whole band into Motel 6 and sleep on the floor and all that. You know how it is here. It's the same way in England. But in the rest of Europe, there's a standard there that was shocking.
Respect for artists and support for the arts.
Well, the thing that when people put down socialism and things like that, the upside to socialistic involvement is that the government gives money to the arts. So they have their sound man get $20 an hour. They're like capitalistic, but at a higher level.
Yeah.
And the sound systems are pristine, and the theaters are, for the most part, cool, and everybody gets their own bed, and the meals were great, and the backstage rider, everything was way better. So when I had to choose a territory, I was choosing mostly Europe. I didn't give much thought to the fact that they'll never understand what I'm singing about.
Yeah.
Especially when the songs got very wordy. And when they did, then I didn't realize that I was probably only attracting the intelligentsia, those that can handle a second or third or fourth language and know all the slang and the word.
Appreciate it for what it was, yeah.
Anyhow, all the way up here in the future, it played out okay because the euro got more popular than the dollar, but the drag is the commute. Because now that I'm older, I don't like to get on the plane so much, and I have to do it every 5 or 6 weeks.
Well, and that's a funny thing about you also. I wanted to hit on that. I didn't know how to hit on it. The fact that you're an expert traveler, that became part of your skill set.
Yeah.
Was being an expert traveler.
Yeah, it was just like George Clooney in Up in the Air. If you had Jeff Bridges from Crazy Heart. in his place.
George Clooney in his place, yeah. That's what it was like.
That is what it was like.
Yeah, I mean, I was with you this summer, and you were getting the flight home from London, but you had a game, like you had a whole roadmap for success on the trip home.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but
it just becomes a hobby.
Yeah.
One of the hobbies you can have on the road is
gaming the travel system. Yeah. So miles, he has to think about miles and how comfortable the trip can be. Like, can he get bumped into business class because he gets knocked off of another trip or something? Yeah. It's a nutty thing, but like you chose to focus on that. I don't focus on that. I just focus on being miserable for the trip.
Well, I gave up poker. That's my poker now.
Yeah.
Playing it out.
So, all right. So your livelihood is still largely earned in Europe.
Yeah.
You married a Danish woman.
The second wife. Yeah.
So you have you live part-time in Europe.
Yeah.
In Denmark.
Yes. My last 3 bands were Canadian with a gospel choir a few years ago, which was really cool. They were non-religious songs, but I had this beautiful Baptist gospel choir back.
Really beautiful record.
Yeah, and they were it was stunning just to be out on the road with them, let alone make the record. But they were all Canadian. And then my band that used to be from Arizona is all Danish now. And my new band, when I'm playing solo, are from Spain, Cordoba. They're flamenco gypsies, real gypsies. And I continuously get labeled as Americana.
When it's like mainly world music. Yeah, people call him an Americana artist. I mean, genre-wise, it's called Americana, but I think it's because of the overriding style that you bring, whatever the hell you're doing. If you're playing with gypsies, you sound like you playing with gypsies, and if you're playing with and that's you're more than just a red thread that runs through that stuff. You're pretty distinctive. How about can you play some piano?
Yeah, good. Can I take this off?
I'll tell you a story while how do you take it off?
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I will take it off. Hang on. This is your grandpa's lamp?
It's her grandpa's lamp.
Okay.
It'll be okay. So I'll tell you a funny story. Howe came and played on a record. Howe and Andrew Bird played on a record for my wife, for Kristen, a couple of years ago. Howe played piano. We limited him to piano, and Andrew played violin, of course. And first thing Howe does is come into our recording studio and go to the kitchenette and take the tray of silverware, and he walks over to the piano, he opens the piano, he dumps the silverware in the piano. And so I think there's an object in there. Yeah, there you go.
Sounds great.
There's a certain... Yeah. Go ahead.
And you can use a capo. And then it makes the piano more three-dimensional. I don't know if there'll be any lyrics in this one.
So I guess we only have about 10 minutes left. So it's kind of time to start to
Questions?
draw conclusions,
okay.
and maybe ask some questions. So one of the conclusions that I'm realizing that I'm drawing is that if I was a kid in a program like this, I'd be interested in the fact that somebody as weird as you could make money and stay in this by being as you can possibly be, not by trying to sound like something else, but by being by sort of exaggerating your fingerprint. Mm-hmm. Would you talk about that?
Well, I think if you find where you're comfortable at, then you'll end up doing it a long time, and things will line up. There'll be tough times, and it's not easy. But I think that the best music is derivative of uneasy times. I think blues and jazz and country, these genres are all they were all formed out of uneasy times, and because it is so tough to be a musician or whatever it is we are in the States, where there is no support from the arts for the most part, and you have to play funky little places and stay on the road is hard and all that you get a backbone and a tougher skin, and then the music is just worth more and more to you because it keeps you afloat. When it gets so hard, it does something to you. And then you plug into it so that it has iridescence. It has illumination. Magic. There's actual magic in there. So, it's an anti-gravity device. And if you can tap into that buoyancy for a little bit, I think you can be satisfied. But how you do it is just as creative as how you assemble a song or how you package a CD.
Right.
So,
I mean, at some point, you're kind of self-selecting, right? I mean, there's this sort of natural selection. People who don't develop the thick skin, who don't put in the hours, who don't have to do it, stop. And they're not there anymore at that point. And it's not that it's not that the competition thins out. It's just that the people who stay become more distinct.
Yeah. Or
more distinctive, maybe I should say. And at that time, maybe your value proposition is just a little bit more crystalline. Maybe it's like it's been articulated a little bit harder, and you become something easier to identify. Does that make sense? Not easier to classify, but easier to identify.
Probably. And when some kid comes up to me and they hand me a tape and they're drunk and they're handing me a CD, and I find myself doing what was done for me. And it gets harder to do that as we get older because we just don't have the time so much we only have so much time left. But Matt Ward did that to me. And,
all right.
And so I helped him with his first record.
Yeah, you guys know M. Ward?
Yeah. And a band called Granddaddy did that back in the 90s. So you kind of, what you do, you end up doing, or what has been done to you, you end up doing, etc.
I think there's just a lot to be said for making it your whole life.
Yeah, and keeping it natural, and nature can be surreal.
Yeah. Any questions from you guys? Anybody have any questions for
I have a question. First off, as someone learning how to interview, the character of this interview has been really enjoyable. The content's great, but the ambiance is really wonderful. But my question
That's the
is...
lamp.
It is the lamp.
It's the lamp, especially the one in the piano. My question is, we have a lot of people in here sort of on the verge. Am I gonna sell my music? Am I gonna be an artist? Am I gonna be, or am I gonna try my hand at tour managing, or some other? They're coming up with their own pie chart for how much they're gonna work as an artist and how much they're gonna work as maybe someone else's team member. What are some of the questions people thinking about pursuing their music should ask themselves?
You mean how to gut check kind of whether or not it should be about your music or whether you should be in the service of someone else?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I think that you just learn about as much as you can, apply it as often as you can. You have your natural stamp on whatever you do. You probably drive your car the way you play guitar. And yeah, and that's who you are. That's your signature. And so, there will be call for that. Some people recognize that. I tend to think that when you get into a band, you set up your lofty goals within reach. And then when they're not working out so well, you improvise. And however you improvise, problem solving is improvisation. And that'll carry you through everything if you get comfortable with happenstance and don't let your imagination limit your resources. Because your imagination, that means you're planning. And man, there's all kind of possibilities out there that are going to come and torpedo your plans. And some of those torpedoes are way better and bigger than your imagination. So if you're ready for it, you'll be better off in the long run. You'll probably stay alive longer with it and have more fun too. And it'll excite you. And that excitement, if you allow the door open to accidental inclusion, will keep you jazzed on any given night and how you're doing it every night.
I think you just, like in that answer, you taught 2 of my classes.
Oh, good. Well.
Like, seriously. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions? Somebody? Yeah. I don't see who that is. Who is it?
It's Pat.
Oh, hey, Pat.
We deal with having to distribute our music in a digital age, whereas I think you got to distribute your music in a more organic way. Is there a way to distribute our music that's more organic and more personal instead of having to wade through all of the crap that's on the internet?
Well, I'm not as well versed maybe as I should be. I think you're more versed.
I think you probably know the answer.
Answer is B?
Well, wouldn't you say that maybe the most personal way is at your gigs?
Oh, well, the way I've stayed alive.
Yeah, talk about your tour CDs versus your...
Yeah, very quickly. The template was I would do one official release every 2 years because the press can only handle talking about you every 2 years or more. They can't talk about you. There's too many bands. It's saturated. They can't afford you the space. So they'll only give you a decent blurt or better every 2 years. So then every year, in between that, I do an unofficial record of some sort. I'll make up a new band or something with some other people and put it out there. In between that, I'll put out a piano record, just instrumentals. And then also in between that, we'll have a tour-only record. So there's roughly like 4 recordings in a 2-year period.
So if you're prolific, that's a strategy. But also just the tour-only record versus the official release, that's a pretty interesting strategy.
Yeah.
Tour-only, you take this homemade CD with some nice organic paper art sticker on it, and it's
so
an
cheap
interesting.
now to make.
It costs nothing to make yourself, but you can make it all special, and each one is handmade and new and one of a kind.
And better if it's not in a jewel case.
Yeah.
Jewel cases were never good. So, and then you can take more with you, and then people want a souvenir if they enjoy the show. Really.
And you get a much larger whack of the money at that point.
Well, that becomes tour support at the very least.
That's right. It's your own tour support. We've talked about this for a really long time. That's exactly right. So.
And now with the advent of YouTube and internet, and you can Bandcamp, things like that, where they come. We put out a record. It's pay what you want, and that's just so rewarding.
Yeah.
For downloads and things like that, because it really makes the most sense.
And it's funny how the transactions don't add up to like the 99 cents per.
No.
When you're an artist like Howe or like Kristen, the average transaction is for much more than iTunes says it is.
Yeah, it's weird.
iTunes says it's 99 cents for a song, but when people give you what they want to give you, I think you'll find once you have your constituency, it's a great deal more than that per transaction.
Sometimes they're high.
Yeah.
And they pay $20 for something that should have only been $4 or $5. And it's like, oh.
Is there another question? Did that answer you, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else? How about playing another piece of music on whatever instrument you want before we go?
Really?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want to do happenstance?
Happenstance? Yeah. Oh.
You said happenstance. Maybe.
I know. That was recorded here, too.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying.
We recorded, we only succumbed to 2 large label endeavors, and each one went horribly wrong. But not horribly wrong. It's just the records never came out. But I got the rights to them back, which was nice.
Yeah.
But one was done here at Lenoir's studio in
4?
93 or 4. But some songs, when we record them, I make them up right when we're doing them, so I never learn the songs. And
That's one of them.
Yeah, that's one. So I can't remember that one. But
Your ropes?
Ropes was done there, but that's not that great.
All right.
It was
Do what you want to do. You're gonna.
I wonder if this will get louder.
I think it'll be good.
Right? See what this
Yeah.
invisible system can handle. Shiver, but I can't.
Yeah.
We can do. Are you searching for a situation? Less hurt, affiliation. Will you feel it when you can't believe your eyes? Welcome to paradise. Are you longing for infiltration somewhere under the radar? Tarnation. Will you know it prior to compromise? Welcome to paradise. Drifting can be stunning, but the current sure can be cunning. You drift too far from where the shore lies. Just getting back is paradise. Are you middle-aged? You're a professional audience. Are you middle-aged or maybe older? With a creviced face and every season seems colder. Can you ever remember a time easier to separate the truth from the lie? Welcome to Billy O'Connell.
Thank you.